Please start.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 10th Public Sector Conclave, which we have been organizing in the physical form since 2010. Of course, this is the first time that this event is being held in the virtual format. The Indian Chamber of Commerce has been working closely for years with the central and state governments, various public sector undertakings across verticals, and this conclave, which would be followed by the PSC Excellence Awards, is our way of acknowledging the contribution of the PSCs in the development of the nation. I'm delighted to welcome our eminent speakers for this first session. We have with us Mr. R.S. Sharma, former CMD, ONGC Limited. Welcome, Mr. Sharma. We have Dr. Ashish Bhattacharya, who is the former director of IMT Ghaziabad and is the founder and MD of Nonlinear Insights, which operates in the sphere of online executive education. He is an expert in corporate governance. And we would be joined by Mr. Karthik Radhya, the managing partner of Mazars, very soon. In the first session, we have these three speakers, and may I request Mr. R.S. Sharma, as I said, former CMD, ONGC Limited, to speak. He would be talking about the role of PSCs in the Indian economy. Mr. Sharma. Sir, I think you need to unmute. Yeah. Right, sir.
Thank you very much, Sujoy, for this opportunity you have given to me. I have been in the PSU fraternity for a long, my entire career had been in the PSUs, and last 9 years at the board level in ONGC. So I have seen a lot of water having flown down the Ganges, the history of PSUs, the vibrant period. And I must acknowledge, I was lucky to have, during my tenure as CMD ONGC, the Secretary DP, Dr. Bhaskar Chatterjee. He's here, the jury chair. I would like to acknowledge his support to the PSU's cause, and which is still continuing today in the role of the jury chair. And the current day, the statement from the policy makers, let me read it out. It's a small statement. Government has no business to be in business. So this is the current philosophy of the policy makers. We know, let me go back the post-independence era. That time the policy makers decided to have a mixed economy for the country, and they had decided a very, very significant role for the public sector enterprises. In fact, if we look at, there were three prime areas where they wanted public sector to play the role. That is for national security, energy security, supply and distribution of essential goods and services. In these, the broad sectors, we know that core infrastructure like railways, post and telegraph, communication, power, and many more these were there in the core infrastructure. Industrialization was another role assigned to the public sector enterprises. Employment generation, balanced development in the country, especially looking to the areas which were underdeveloped, to put up the core infrastructure industries in those areas, so that not only sectoral development, the geographical development also is there on equitable basis in the country. Healthcare, socio-economic development, oil and minerals, nuclear, public utilities. I need not dwell in details. I'm sure all the audience, other co-panelists, everybody is quite understanding that what role public sector has played in all these areas. And government, this public sector continues to implement all government schemes and policies today also, that's still continuing. Myself, when I was heading ONGC, I was also heading this PSC Council in the CII, and where we had as many as 45, 50 members, all the CEOs of different companies. We used to deliberate. We had done a seminar in the evening where CAG came and participated. We had participation from CVC, the secretaries, and then there was a publication also released. I'm forgetting the name of that publication, but the role of public sector was very widely recognized, and I must say it is still being recognized. In this connection, I would like to just mention in 2018, when the Honorable Prime Minister, who is also currently heading the government, he had inaugurated CPSC's conclave, to be very precise, on 9th of April 2018. So he had outlined the role of PSUs, that the Indian PSUs need to minimize the import dependence and maximize geo-global reach across the globe. We all know the role played by the PSUs in the Make in India campaign. If we all, whenever there's an area of any national emergency, national calamities, national crisis, national disaster, we all know the public sector enterprise have come up in a big way to contribute significantly to these causes, these policies and scheme of the government. I would like to mention today itself, all the media is carrying the detailed report that the oil minister has given a call, rather mandated oil PSUs to construct 50,000 dwelling units for migrant workers in the area, near the areas of activities. And let me tell you, when this kind of mandate is given, the PSUs go all out in all seriousness to implement these schemes. We know that in the area of CSR, besides the Make in India, CSR, what role, whether it is a Swachh Bharat campaign or putting up toilets in schools, public places, or whenever there's any such cause, PSUs come forward readily. Now, whenever they are given a call, they go in a much better organized way to contribute to these causes. Now also PM CARES Relief Fund for this pandemic, or you are all aware, I don't have the numbers readily with me, but we know the PSUs have contributed very significantly. Year after year, they are called upon in the month of March to pay special dividends to meet budgetary targets of the government. And I recall we have been even though we had to, take some borrowings or cut down as non-essential expenditure, we used to contribute very significantly. I distinctly recall in 1991, just before the economic liberalization, the country was passing through the severe forex crisis. ONGC was approached by the government that for their various schemes under implementation in the offshore to go for these forex borrowings and on lend those funds to Government of India in terms of Indian rupees. Thereafter, devaluation happened, and myself in my various roles at the middle level, as a CFO level, we continue to plead the government let the losses incurred because of devaluation and the forex borrowings done at the behest of the government may be compensated. But no complaints, that was a national cause. We didn't get those reimbursements. But I'm not here to, say any grouse over here, but I only saying that the PSUs have come up readily, vibrantly to support whenever there is a cause for the national cause or for any issue where it is expected that the PSUs need to come forward. Now this current statement of the government that government has no business to be in business, well, I have high respect for the policymakers. They would have their own reasons. Personally, somehow I beg to differ. I have done some study even on global scale. In the list of Fortune 500 for the 2019, 25% of the companies were public sector enterprises representing various countries, and 7 of them from India also. India was among the top 8, not 7, with large number of PSUs, played that geostrategical interest of the government appearing in the global Fortune 500. Just a little bit of self-praise here when I was heading ONGC. So ONGC was the first ever entity from India to appear in the list of 10 most admired global Fortune 500 companies. So it's not that I'm trying to, praise all ONGC, but I'm here talking broadly public sector undertaking. Today, various other entities have been, continuing to play that role for the national cause. And when it comes to the issue of contribution to national exchequer, these PSUs have not been behind. I don't have the data with me, so I'm not able to mention that. But what I mean to say, the significance of the public sector enterprises continues to be as great as that was in the earlier years. The policymakers think that the public sector need to get privatized. Future does not have any role for the PSUs. I would be pleading the policymakers to relook into those statements. Even today, I'll just give one example. Supply distribution of essential services and the goods. I'm from the oil sector, take Indian Oil Corporation, HPCL, BPCL. These 3 entities made sure, even at the total lockdown in the country, to ensure there was no shortage of petroleum products in any nook and corner of the country. These companies, they do their product sharing, infrastructure sharing, pipeline sharing, tankages sharing for the national cause without caring that how does it affect their bottom line. And when this BPCL is on the chopper block, I'm seriously worried that this kind of synergy that these 3 companies are having, that will get seriously disturbed, and the most adversely affected company is going to be Indian Oil Corporation. That is with an entity, they have been so far working with absolute synergy, sharing various resources, and now they become their competitors. How far they will be able to play that role? Because nobody has felt any discomfort, I feel the policymakers are not realizing the kind of disturbance it will cause if any of these 3 entities get privatized. Anyway, I leave at that. I retired almost a decade back, they must have examined all areas. So I'm not here to criticize any of the government policies. And in case PSUs have not been able to deliver in certain areas, I would say that there have been genuine constraints. They have not been getting level playing field. The regulatory controls they are having, there are 3 C's, CAG, CVC, CBI, private sector is not subjected to these controls. Personally, my experience is none of these constraints hurt my company when I was heading. The constraint used to be the oversight. All the 28 parliamentary committees want to examine on GC. And the chairman of the committee has prerogative to decide the venue, and the CMD of the company, whatever other engagements they may be having, they have to leave everything and reach the place to be personally present for such reviews. So that's a huge constraint on the time, but still look at it. The companies have delivered despite those constraints. Slow decision making because of, again, multiplicity of accountability these the PSUs are having. Lack of autonomy. We know that a lot of board level positions remain vacant because PSB or the search committees are not able to select the people. Even today, I understand the chairman of PSB, the position is vacant, and many of the interviews that are lined up, they are pending. So, despite all these interferences, if this public sector continues to deliver, I feel there needs to be adequate recognition and adequate appreciation for the role of PSUs. I think I have taken enough time, but I'll be happy if there's any, the cross questioning or any clarification required of me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sharma. Thank you for those valuable insights. And now we move on to Dr. Ashish Bhattacharya. As I had mentioned, he is an expert in the field of corporate governance. And today he is going to talk about corporate governance. Dr. Bhattacharya, please.
Thank you, Shuja, for giving me this opportunity. I will just take 10 minutes to discuss on corporate governance. Thanks to Mr. Sharma, he has placed on table the key points and issues about public sector. I will talk primarily about the listed public sector enterprises. We know that there are 54 listed CPSEs, Central Public Sector Enterprises. And when we look at NSE 50 companies, there are 12 of them in the NSE 50 list. That means still they are occupying a very important position in the corporate sector, in the economy. But when we talk about 54 listed CPSEs, one statistic shows that 80% of the companies are non-compliant as regards the independent directors. And that includes all large companies. I will not like to name them. And there are 60% of the listed enterprises, public sector enterprises, don't comply with the minimum requirement of the women directors in the company. Now, when we talk about public sector, and as Mr. Sharma has rightly pointed out, that after independence, it was brought in as an instrument to deliver public policies. At that time, there was no private capital available, and therefore there was no demands from private sector if the public sector has occupied an important position. Today, it is much different. When we talk about corporate governance, I said about 2 non-compliance. But when I say non-compliance as such, does that mean that corporate governance of public sector is not adequate or poor? I think that will be incorrect on my part or on the part of anyone else to say that the corporate governance in public sector is below standard, if I use that word. But if it is so, because when you look at the grading of public sector by DPE, Department of Public Enterprises, I was going through for 18-19 grading, there was a sheet that was a compliance sheet that whether you are complying with all the requirements of corporate governance. And one problem with public sector, or to say any sector in evaluating corporate governance, is that you cannot differentiate whether the company is taking ticks the box approach or is implementing the compliance in spirit. And therefore, when I see that most of the public sector enterprises have been graded as excellent, except those who did not submit the grade sheet, they were poor. There were exempted companies also, and there were companies under construction. Does that mean that public sector, all the companies, if I say, are doing exceedingly well as regards corporate governance? Again, as we cannot say that by non-compliance tantamounts to a poor corporate governance, we also cannot say that if everyone has got excellent, because 85% if you get excellence grade, then everyone is doing exceedingly well. We can't say that. Now, therefore, what I think that as someone who are discussing or have an interest in corporate governance should ask a few questions about the corporate governance in public enterprises. First of all, is there a need for independent directors? That is a very important question. As Mr. Sharma was talking about the working of public sector, we understand that there is a dominant shareholder called government, and government is dictating the terms. For example, when government says that pay special dividend, or I recall the case in the case of Coal India about the pricing of coal, in that case, why not a private sector dominating player can also give some kind of dictate and say that you please do this thing, that thing, which can be against the interest of the minority shareholder, if I use that term. Now the question is, what independent director's role is to protect the interest of minority shareholders. Of course, there are other roles. If we say that independent directors bring objectivity in the discussion, then of course they have a role to play. But if most of the decisions are being taken by the government or the ministry, in that case, is there a role of the independent directors? I think that is a question which we need to examine and say that rather than reporting non-compliance, can we exempt public sector from appointing independent directors or adequacy of independent directors? Because it does not listen well and it does not earn the credibility when we say that public sector is non-compliant of the corporate governance code. Similarly, when we talk about gender diversity, if we say that 60% of the listed enterprises could not comply with the requirements of women directors in the board, then again the question arises, is it that important? Then we are talking about that whether public sector enterprises should have a code different from the general code available, which we are asking private sector to comply. Is there a difference? People may ask the question that what is the difference? If we say that there is a difference, then what is that difference which we are talking about? When I read some of the articles, I find that the difference is we don't trust the private entrepreneurs and trust the government. And therefore, we don't say that if the government is the dominating shareholders, then they cannot use the wealth of the minority shareholders for any other purpose, which I say that it is the public purpose. But if that is a possibility, and we have listed ourselves and inviting public to invest in the public sector, in that case, is it not important that as a dominating shareholder, we also take care of the minority shareholder, else we don't list our companies. Now that might be extreme step, but that is the important question which we need to deliberate when we are talking about public sector enterprises and corporate governance. We cannot just keep our eye closed and say that we shall continue to report on compliance. And then we shall say that we should apply the same corporate governance code to both state-run enterprises and private sector enterprises. More important question here is that whether public sector enterprises should continue to be used as an instrument for implementing public policy. We see that that is continuing, whether we look at public sector banks, we look at oil companies, or look at any other company, we find that the initial intention of the government when establishing public sector enterprises immediately after independence is continuing to use as an instrument. But can that be misused? The answer is yes, of course, that can be misused. Because when we talk about corporate governance in private sector, there is no third party outside the primary stakeholder, that means government. And when we say government, sometimes we don't think that government is run by political parties. There are elections comes and go. And therefore, the interest of the political parties, do they take care of the company? Do they take care of the economy? Or do they take care of their political ambitions? We really don't know. And therefore, there is always the important question that if there is a chance in the private sector that the promoters, or so to say others, will take away the wealth, expropriate the wealth of minority shareholders of the company, the same possibility exists even when we talk about the public sector companies. And we cannot say that this cannot happen. We are talking about a possibility. We are not saying that this is happening. But whenever there is a possibility, then there should be a system to plug that possibility. In that case, we come to the question again that what should be the role of the nominee directors? When we look at the private sector, the nominee director does not play a very important role. They only protect the interest of the nominating enterprise. But when we look at public sector board, the nominating director plays a very important role and come with the diktat of the minister. And therefore, that reduces the role of the board of directors. In that situation, we are talking about how to evaluate the corporate governance level in public sector enterprises. Is it performance? The answer is no. As Mr. Sharma has pointed out, that even in ONGC, some losses were taken because some decisions were taken by the government and that were not compensated. Therefore, so long you use public sector as an instrument for implementing public policy, for example, constructing the housing for migrant workers, that will not come when we report the normal way, the performance and the financial position of the company. And therefore, the performance parameters we cannot compare with the same as private sector. But when you are listed in a stock exchange, then perhaps those parameters will be brought out and it will mislead the investors about the actual performance of the company. And therefore, when we talk about corporate governance, the important question is what kind of metrics we need to use to evaluate the performance of the public sector. An important point here that when we list the company and investor invest, I can give you some data that in Power Grid, the FII investment was 25.32%. I am talking about the June end shareholding pattern, and MF was 10.93, that means almost 36%. But when we come to other enterprises, then the shareholding of FII and others is quite less. For example, in ONGC, the FII shareholding is 8.1% and mutual fund shareholding is 6.1%. When we come to OIL, the FII is 7.21 and MF is 5.55. What is important is that those infrastructure sector where government interference is too much, the interest of public or the financial institutions are quite low. And therefore, the question arises, should we list the companies that are operating in the infrastructure sector or strategic sector in the economy? That is a very important question that we need to answer when we talk about corporate governance. Finally, I would like to say that shareholders, those who invest in the public sector, knows there are constraints, and therefore they might be incorporating that in deciding the cost of capital or their expected return. I feel that it is important at this juncture to think through whether we need a separate corporate governance code for public sector enterprises, whether listed or not. Thank you, friends. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Bhattacharya. Thank you for your insights. And I'm sure all of us here, though it is not in our hands, but all of us here are going to give a lot of thought to whatever you have been talking about. We now move on to our next speaker, Mr. Karthik Radhia. Mr. Radhia, I hope you are here. Yeah.
Yes, very much.
Yeah. So Mr. Karthik Radhia is the managing partner of Mazars India LLP. Welcome, Mr. Radhia. Mr. Radhia has a lot of expertise in the field of consulting, particularly in risk management, internal audit, and internal controls framework. Today, he is going to talk about a very important and pertinent topic, leveraging transformative emerging technologies in PSEs for achieving operational excellence. Mr. Radhia, over to you.
Sure. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. We just have to make it full screen. Yeah.
Sure. So one of the very relevant topics of today, which is leveraging the transformative technologies, which is digital and technology transformations for PSEs, public sector enterprises. And what also comes along with that is cybersecurity defense and the corporate resilience framework. All of this is very, very relevant in the current times that we are going through, particularly the aftermath of pandemic COVID-19. And there are very many important lessons. Almost every part of human society has some of the other lessons. And as far as PSEs are concerned, PSEs also have very important lessons here, how to make each and every PSE more resilient, because a lot of these PSEs have come up in last few decades, and all of us agree that what we have seen is a part of COVID pandemic that we have not seen before. And there are therefore lessons for almost every part of the human vocation, and also PSEs, because we have evolved in a time where we have not seen some kind of a black swan. If I were to call it as a black swan, it's much more than a black swan that we can talk about. So therefore, how do we leverage, and whether it is a right time for PSEs to leverage the digital and technology transformation? So without taking much time, I would like to go into the real concept. What are the myths? What is the value that the digital technology transformation brings to the table? So coming to the concept really means that, all the mundane business processes, repetitive business processes should be re-engineered and should be standardized and should be given away to the machines and robots. And therefore the creative activities should still be with the human beings, and there should be human intervention as far as the creative work is concerned. But the human intervention will definitely be applied at a certain level, which will be level up. So let's say a process is performed at level A. Maybe the intervention, wherever there are some decisions to be taken, it is a level B to which it can go to for human interventions. But it definitely means that there is a human involvement. But it's just that the traditional business processes are given away to machines. And take an example of, a simple thing like a Microsoft Excel sheet. Before having these kind of Excel sheets or spreadsheets, we used to maintain a lot of manual records with involving a lot of calculations, etc., and a lot of printed documents. And after this, of course, we don't need those printed documents. Otherwise, the reference and taking away those documents and referring to those documents may become quite difficult. And it is a next level from here now to say that how the business processes can, in the similar way like a spreadsheet, can be automated. So that's the concept. There are myths that are applicable here. There are three essential myths which we need to deal with. The first one is to say the digital transformation involves investments in the digital infrastructure. That's an expensive proposition. Take an example of all the physical investments that we have made so far. Whether you talk about schools, colleges, offices, huge physical infrastructure investments that we have made. Presently, a lot of this investment is not much of a use because most of us are not able to go to our offices and function in a routine manner. And likewise, the same with schools and with universities and colleges. So digital transformation investment is comparatively not an expensive proposition. Even if you make 5% or 7% of the investments that you have made in other fixed assets or the physical assets that you own now into the digital assets, I think it will be much better value adding and giving you a much better return on investments. The second myth is there's a lack of human touch. It is again a myth because you say that, okay, everything is given to machines, so there is a human touch. But there are conversational artificial intelligence, which at times give much better experience that a human is able to give in a very standardized manner. To say that it's a lack of human touch is not completely correct and therefore a myth. And the third one, which is very relevant, is, and I'm going to come back to this a little later in my presentation, is the myth that the robots or machines will take away human jobs and make humans redundant and unemployed. And that's a very valid thing that we need to answer. But as I said, I will come back to this. Basically, it's simply a myth. In my view, there is a very good collaboration and complementing between machines on one hand and humans on the other hand to create a very good value, which I will come back to. The real value lies in tying up the organization with a common organizational theme, because what you see is each part of the organization has actually evolved over a period of time. And because of this, there are functional silos. Each and every function has evolved its own business processes. The moment you bring digital transformation and robotic automation, what it will do is it will tie up the entire organization with a common organizational theme and an approach that will run across all business processes, that will help in integrating business processes and business functions. So your business functions will get well integrated and tied together through a common approach. What it will also call for is an integration between various technologies, because technologies are different kinds. You have ERPs and legacies on one side, and you have emerging technologies on the other side, and you need a tying component that actually ties the older technologies or legacy technologies to some of the emerging technologies, and that is what you will achieve through digital transformation. The last part is, of course, the economic value proposition. As I said, it's not an expensive proposition, but it will really give a lot of tangible and intangible benefits. I quickly jump on to the second part, which is how do we leverage this? And basically what we say is that, okay, leverage it by automation, leverage it by having a 2 to 3 years time frame. And I've given one example of a finance process automation where almost 60 to 70% of the finance processes, starting from invoices, rebates to invoicing, everything, reconciliations, everything could be automated. It would also mean that the technologies like RPA, various business applications, analytics, commerce automation, IoT could be integrated together so that it is actually one integrated platform that we are talking about. And as I said, integrated processes to bring a common organizational theme and integrated not just finance but all other different kinds of processes. Finance process is a good candidate because most of the processes are very, very rule based and value driven, economic value driven. So it becomes a very good candidate to start with. But that will help you in overcoming the functional silos and integrate different functions. Very quickly on the tangible value proposition, typically what we have seen is the cost that you are going to save. You will have a business case in the year one itself. From the year two, you will have a business case of saving nearly 50 to 60% of your costs. It will help you to achieve organizational robustness, quality management systems, capability maturity model, overcoming functional silos, and project process objectivity and reflection of common organizational theme across. And the last part is the corporate resilience framework. What we have seen is the traditional enterprise risk management, which was just a concept a decade old, or a traditional business continuity management, which is again a decade old concept, is suddenly replaced by a concept called corporate resilience framework, which is going much beyond into the very finer aspects of how the processes and how your business overall becomes resilient. So basically simulating and going scenarios, testing those scenarios. Are you taking positions that are not sustainable? And can you run if there are some external unforeseen scenarios that come in? Are you prepared for it? And can we do some stress test about it? So evaluating your business strategies and business and financial models also around it. So that's a part of corporate resilience framework. In-depth cyber security, to ensure that because you are talking completely about technology, the use of technology, therefore an in-depth cyber security becomes very important, starting from vulnerability assessment, penetration testing, to even application security and cyber security framework. The last very part is making the human redundant. I said I'll come back to this later. As I said, the machines and humans will basically collaborate and complement well together. It will allow humans to focus on innovative, intuitive processes and creative processes which are strategic and have high impact. And therefore, take an example of all the IT revolution, ERP revolution, agricultural automation, mechanization. None of these have taken away human jobs. They've actually enabled human beings and organizations to pursue the next level of growth. Take also an example of ERP system like an SAP, which has actually helped you to automate the recording, the bookkeeping recording process. It has not taken away human jobs, but actually helped humans to become more efficient by using these systems, and therefore get on-demand reports and take timely decisions. So all in all, I think these are the learnings as much for PSCs, because they are business undertakings. And as the private sector takes up the digital transformation very actively, and we have seen that it becomes a very important part for even PSCs to take the technology transformation, corporate resilience framework, cyber security, all of these at a priority, on a priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Radhya. Very interesting points. And I'm glad you could make it in spite of the power grid failure today in Mumbai, which all of us are aware of. So thank you. I don't know, there could be a few questions. Yes, so there is one question here. Though we have very limited time, but maybe this one question you could answer. What are the primary digital interventions you see upcoming in the public sector in India in the near and midterm?
Sure. So as I said, with the advent of 5G, which is very, very close, one very important thing that is going to come up is IoT. And most of the public sector enterprises will take IoT and some of the other technologies like RPA, robotic process automation, which is, again, we are seeing a lot of PSUs already picking up this journey with some of the OEMs, like some of the RPA OEMs, and even I think the distributed ledgers like blockchains. Although it is not something very near, but I think at least maybe a year or a year and a half away, where we will see a lot of transformation happening, even where enterprises will form a private and public blockchain groups in the form of a distributed subledger systems that will be running across this various kinds of blockchain groups that will create. And also last one is the commerce automation. All that we have seen so far is that, you've automated processes in your business, but between enterprises, let's say an enterprise A and enterprise B, how do they communicate today? Even the communication of transactions like purchase orders, like sales orders and invoices, all of this are actually manual. They're shared over an email or through courier, etc. But that will become again automated through a commerce and through a system like a blockchain. That is what we're expecting to see coming up.
Great. Thank you so much. I mean, there are other questions also, but I think what we will do is, since we have very limited time, if there are other questions, we will send it to you. And if people are interested, they can somehow get some information on that. So thank you. And with that, we come to the end of this first session. Our heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed speakers, Mr. R.S. Sharma, Dr. Bhattacharya, Mr. Radhya, for your time and for sharing your thoughts. Our gratitude to Mazars India for our program, which is going to be followed now, the PSC Excellence Awards. Mazars is the knowledge partner this year. And thank you for your support. And of course, thanks to our valued sponsors for all the support. We now quickly move on to the next session, which is the 10th Public Sector Excellence Awards. So without taking any more time, I think we can move on to the next session. So good afternoon once again, ladies and gentlemen, for everybody who is joining now. Public sector enterprises have been an integral part of India and the Indian economy since independence, and its contribution towards the development of the nation can hardly be overemphasized. The PSC Excellence Awards is our annual event to recognize and acknowledge the contribution of Indian PSCs in nation building. I would first request Dr. Rajiv Singh, Director General, Indian Chamber of Commerce, to share his welcome remarks. Dr. Singh.
Good afternoon, all. On behalf of ICC, may I extend a very warm welcome to all of you. And I'm so happy to see all our jury members, right from the jury chair, Dr. Bhaskar Chatterjee. Glad to see you here. Our mentor and supporter, Mr. R.S. Sharma. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being with us always. So glad to see Mrs. Deepa Gupta, our what we say JVR, Mr. JV Ramamurthy. Glad to see you. And we are also happy to have Mr. Alok Parthi with us, former Secretary Coal. Sir, thank you for being with us. And may I extend a warm welcome to all our guests, Mr. Kartik Radia, Mr. Ashish Bhattacharya, Mr. Rakesh Chopra, Mr. Dinesh Kumar, Mr. Suvayu Ray, and all other esteemed guests who are with us. Mr. Pathan, of course. So I don't think I need to highlight the importance of PSCs and the role which the PSCs have played over the last many decades in nation building. I think there was one time when everybody realized the importance of the PSCs. In between, there were many voices about the efficiency and various other management issues. But again, I think for last many years, we have witnessed and we have seen and we have celebrated the great work which is being done by the PSCs all over India. Whether it is the time of any national crisis, or whether it is the sectors where the private sector has been little hesitant in venturing into, all the critical and the core sectors. Even last many years, we have seen the internal management practices, the governance systems in many areas, or I would say in most areas, are at par with the private sector. And we have seen in many cases, they are even better than the private sector. And being a chamber of commerce, I have no hesitation in saying that and acknowledging that. I think while there are a lot of areas where PSUs are working and they still need to work, but I think there are many practices and many success stories where the private sector even could learn from the PSUs. And PSUs are definitely making significant contribution to the nation building and to the Indian economy. While everybody, and at the same time, we also have to keep in mind that PSUs work under a lot of constraints. I don't want to talk about those, but in spite of all the constraints, I think PSUs have been able to done exceedingly well. Even in terms of the exports, because everybody is talking about now self-reliant India and vocal for local, Atmanirbhar Bharat. I think PSUs also play a big role in India's exports, and PSUs have a decent share in the Indian export basket. We started this award several years back, and since then, we have been working with some of the renowned experts and the achievers who have in their own way contributed a lot to the PSEs. We are fortunate to have all of them as our jury members, and we have been working all together to acknowledge and the contribution which the public sector has been making to the Indian economy. This year, it is the 10th edition of the Indian Public Sector Excellence Awards. The esteemed jury headed by Dr. Bhaskar Chatterjee, former Secretary DPE, Government of India. Incidentally, we started these awards with him only. And we are happy that even during COVID times and in spite of all the challenges, we are meeting today and we are having this virtual award ceremony. The categories I'm sure most of you know, which are basically the operational performance excellence, human resource management, contribution by women, CSR, corporate governance, R&D, innovation, CEO of the year, and jury award for the company of the year. This year, in spite of COVID and all the difficulties what we faced, we got 60 nominations from Navratnas, Maharatnas, and Mini Ratnas and others. We are also happy to have with us our knowledge partners. Mr. Karthik Radia is here representing Mazars. So thank you for being with us. Without taking much of time, I would like to once again extend a warm welcome to all our esteemed guests, participants, speakers, and I would request Sujay now to take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. As Dr. Singh mentioned, the evaluation of this year's award has been facilitated by Mazars India as our knowledge partners. I would now request Mr. Shubhayu Ray, Director, Government Advisory at Mazars, to share with us the award methodic. Mr. Ray.
Thank you, Shujai. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I will quickly share the presentation, and in the next 10 minutes, I will run you through the award methodics that we followed for this year's evaluation. Is my screen visible?
Yes, it
Shujai,
is.
if you can just confirm. Yeah.
Yes,
Thank you.
Yes, it is.
So this is the 10th year of ICC's PAC Awards. And for the first time, I think it's entirely done online. And today in this presentation, we'll take you through 3 different sections. One is the award categories, which Dr. Rajiv Singh a little earlier told you. Next is the important one, the evaluation methodologies that we followed for these different 7 award categories. And finally, the eminent jury panel that was there, who supported us, who guided us in evaluating all the nominations that we received and how we arrived at the final winners. So the award categories, as Dr. Singh has already said, it's operational performance excellence, human resource management excellence, corporate social responsibility, contribution of women, corporate governance, research and development, and CEO, CMD, MD of the year. And we have received around 60 applications across Maharatnas, Navaratnas, and Miniratnas throughout India. Now, with respect to the operational performance excellence, we have received 10 applications. In fact, 10 applications were shortlisted for the final, for the selection of the final winner. Across 7 different parameters, they were evaluated. The average PBIT to turnover in percentage in last 3 years. So the average of net profit and net worth in the last 3 years. So you can see that for this particular category, we have considered the performance across 3 years, because in many cases, the strategies are taken, and while the implementation happens, the outcome is achieved not in 1 year, but it may take about 3 years. So that is the reason for this particular category, 3 years, last 3 years results were taken. Then the second parameter was the average growth in net value added in the last 3 years and the average of PBIT to capital employed in the last 3 years. The third one was the initiatives undertaken by the company in the national importance programs. Some of the examples are like Digital India, Swachh Bharat, and how the PSCs have contributed to these initiatives. As Mr. Sharma in his opening remarks has mentioned, how ONGC had once helped the government of India. Similarly, a lot other PSCs are actually supporting the governments at the national and the state levels in making a real impact to the citizens of the country. So those initiatives have been considered for the evaluation. Top 5 achievements of the company in the industrial segment and the area of expertise where they operate. The percentage increase in the revenue generated and the client volume obtained in the last 3 financial years. Innovation is a key aspect for all these policy implementers. The innovative measures taken towards this improvement of the operational performance, again, in the last 3 financial years is also evaluated. And the top initiatives which are planned, it's not just what you have done in the past, but also what are your initiatives, what are your strategies in this year for which you will get the fruits in the next year or later. So those strategies and the initiatives have also been evaluated. So as you can see in this first category, I think the most focus is on the outcome that the PSCs have delivered. Moving on to the next one, as we all understand, human resource is the most critical element in any organization, and not to mention that in a PSC organization where it is actually a government's tool, government's arm to implement some of its policies. So human resource management is a key element. Now for this, again, there are 8 parameters which were evaluated, and total of 10 applications were shortlisted for the final evaluation for the selection of the winner. The first is a board approved HR policy, skill development policy, and the performance management system, which should be in place. The cutoff date was 31st March 2019. The training expense incurred by the company during the period 1st April 2018 to 31st March 2019. The succession planning policy for the senior management staff, details of the last 3 CEO, CMD, MDs, and the training attended from grades E7 to E9, which is the senior grades. Movement of the CMDs, CEOs, and the MD level during the past 3 years in the for the past 3 financial years. So whether they have been promoted within the organization or they have been recruited from outside, or how they have moved out of this organization, those have been evaluated, and we have come across various important insights of these companies about the human resource management practice that are being for sexual harassment, whether it exists or not, whether they have a whistleblower policy or not. These have been evaluated. Innovative measures towards human resource development in the last 3 financial years has also been evaluated, and whether a documented performance management system exists or not. for these PSCs have also been evaluated. Finally, the employee recognition is of utmost importance because a motivated employee will deliver better and more outcome will come out. So the employee recognition policy also finds a special mention as one of the key parameters for the evaluation under this HR management excellence category. Moving on, the corporate social responsibility, we have Dr. Bhaskar Chatterjee here with us today as the jury chair. And definitely corporate social responsibility is one of the key elements that we need to look into, especially for PSCs, and not to mention that it is actually a key element for all organizations in India. And in this category, we have a total of 13 applications which were shortlisted. And the way we have evaluated it is the expenditure in CSR in the last 3 financial years have been seen. The availability of board level CSR and sustainability committee in the company is also seen, because there are requirements of some mandatory committees which are required to be there for all organizations and more for the PSCs. So this is also a very key element for this particular category. Board level approved CSR policy. So it is not a very ad hoc kind of a thing, and it is driven by corporate senior management's leadership. That is also something which we have evaluated. The availability of a sustainability policy, again, a very key element. The CSR initiative projects undertaken in the last 3 financial years and the outcome that it has generated, the impact assessment of those, whether the study has been done or is it just a compliance exercise, that has been clearly evaluated, and based on that, markings have been given. The top 3 initiatives under sustainability development has been judged. And finally, the reports that has been published on sustainability activities by these organizations have also been looked into. The next one, a very, very key element, Dr. Bhattacharya in his talk, he mentioned about this key element partially about the importance of women directors in the PSCs and the contribution that the woman does in these PSCs. That is something we have evaluated across all nominations. And finally, 7 applications were shortlisted for award selection under this category. Now, what do we look into for this particular category? We evaluated total percentage of women in the company, percentage of women present at the board level, whether any maternity leave policy is available or not, whether the maternity leave policy is greater than 26 weeks and any additional benefits are being covered or not, whether the PSCs are providing any provision for flexi working policies for the mothers, or whether they can work from home, whether the PSC has creche facility and whether the cost is borne by the employer. Top 5 initiatives undertaken by the PSC for women welfare, contribution of PSC towards women-oriented programs, whether the PSC has received any award or recognition for the involvement of women at international, country, or even at a state level from any reputed organization. And finally, the participation of the PSC in the women in public sector programs. So these are the different parameters which has been evaluated, and ultimately the winners have been decided. Next one is corporate governance. A total of 9 applications were shortlisted under this category. Now, this is where it has been looked into whether it is getting into a high risk areas. The PSCs have evaluated the high risk areas for them to operate. The promotional activities undertaken in the organization for anti-corruption and good governance policies, whether there are information available regarding the annual reports, tenders, job vacancies, whether the transparency is there with respect to the activities that they do and whether they are published on a regular basis or not. Again, this is one. The next parameter is something which is kind of overlaps with the previous category, but again of huge importance. That is presence of women member in the board of directors. Next is the total number of board director meetings held during the period, that is the last financial year in FY 2019. The number of board level committees that were in place. Again, I said that there are certain mandatory committees which are required to be there, and whether those committees were there in place in the last financial year. Number of meetings which are with the independent directors during this period, that was also evaluated objectively. Now, again, the whistleblower policy, a little bit of overlap, another category, but whether that whistleblower policy is present or not, and whether it is being followed religiously or not, that is also one of the key parameters that we have evaluated. The availability of an internal audit team and their functions, and whether the outcomes with respect to those internal audit exercises have actually benefited the companies or not, that also we have evaluated. And finally, the top five innovation practices of the firm. A little bit of subjective one, but then this is where the juries actually went together, evaluated all the innovation practices that were listed by the nominations, and accordingly decided on the top performer under this category. R&D and technology development, another key aspect of growth of any organization, not to mention about PSUs. And in this category, total 6 applications were shortlisted. Now, we evaluated under this category across 5 parameters, the total expenditure on R&D, again, for the last 3 financial years, because R&D is not a short-term kind of a thing, it's a long-term thing, and we have taken a period of 3 years for the evaluation. The total personal expenses, the expenses spent on people and employees who are engaged in the R&D activities, that also is a very objective parameter which we had picked up, and based on we have identified and given marks to the different participants. Again, the R&D policy, if you are spending on R&D activities, you are indulging into R&D related outcomes, then whether you have a defined R&D policies and whether these exercises that you are doing, whether they are in line with the policy or not, that's also a very key element that we had to evaluate. The patents filed and awarded to the company during the last 3 financial years, very key element of this evaluation, and the top 5 measures taken by the company in this particular area, again, in the last 3 years. So these are the 5 parameters on which this final 6 nominations were evaluated for the selection of the winner. CEO, CMD, and MD of the year. Now for this, in the final nomination, we had 5 applications, and the 8 parameters on which this was evaluated were the top 3 innovative practices, the average revenue growth, EBITDA in the period, the participation of the nominee and designation held in the different committees formed by the Government of India and professional bodies, awards received by the nominee during this last financial year, national and international level publication by the nominee, whether he has held any independent director position elsewhere as well, as a nominee played any role in startup initiatives in the country or elsewhere, and the contribution of the nominee in the sustainability development. So across these 8 parameters, the 5 shortlisted nominations were evaluated, and finally the winner was selected. Now we come to the eminent juries who guided us in this exercise. Dr. Bhaskar Chatterjee, he was the jury chair, and he was ably supported by Mr. H.L. Zutshi, Mr. R.S. Sharma, Mr. Asad Pathan, Ms. Deepa Gupta, Dr. Ashish Bhattacharya, Dr. Uddesh Kohli, Mr. Alok Parthi, Mr. J.V. Ramamurthy, Mr. S.K. Chaturvedi. And with that, I'll finally have 3 slides on Mazars, just to introduce you, because this is the first year that Mazars is doing this exercise with ICC. We are thankful to ICC for giving us this opportunity. And just for the people who are not initiated to Mazars, Mazars is a global company present in 106 countries, originally based out of France, and we are globally 75-year-old and having more than 40,000 people throughout the world. And the key element that is to be noted is right there in the left bottom corner of the screen, that's 53% of the workforce are women. Now, globally, we have offices in 318 offices, out of which 160 are located in Europe. And finally, in India, we have started the advisory practices have started just a year back in India. But the audit services were being provided by our member firms, Kalyaniwala Mistry and S.N. Dhawan and Company. And Mazars is present in 8 different cities in India. With that, I thank all of you for giving us this opportunity and supporting us in this initiative. I hand over the control back to you, Shujoy. Please take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. So now we move directly to the awards. We are indeed indebted to the jury for their support, guidance, insights, and cooperation, not only this year, but over the years that we have been associated with them. I would request Dr. Bhaskar Chatterjee, Jury Chair, 10th ICC PSC Excellence Awards, to kindly share his thoughts. Dr. Chatterjee.
Good afternoon, and a very big thank you to everyone for being with us here this afternoon. Let me say, Dr. Singh, my fellow members of the jury, esteemed guests, and all our listeners and viewers who have joined us today in this session. What a privilege and a pleasure it has been for me to chair this wonderful jury of very, very eminent persons who have contributed, every one of them in their own way, to coming to the conclusions that we have finally arrived at. Hats off to ICC and Dr. Singh for this 10th edition of these PSC Excellence Awards. You have shown us great commitment, a tremendous amount of grit and determination in staying with the public sector, in committing yourselves to the public sector, year after year, getting entries, having them evaluated, awarding and rewarding them. And we all know that how much any sector, particularly the public sector, needs some element of recognition, some element of encouragement to go out there and give off their best day after day, despite all the constraints and difficulties that they face. So to you, to ICC, to you, Dr. Singh, and to all of your staff members, I must convey my very warm appreciation. The speakers who have spoken today, Mr. Sharma, Dr. Ashish Bhattacharya, and Karthik Radia, they gave us such a wonderful 360-degree perspective on what the public sector stands for, how it has been, what it is currently doing, what its performance levels are, and a word about the future. What's the road ahead? What kind of digitization? What kind of cybersecurity? All of that was very, very beautifully put across. And I must confess that there was much that I myself learned from all the inputs that we had before us today. Coming to the jury and its deliberations year after year, I can only say it just gets harder and harder and harder. That's because not only are the performances improving, but the way in which we are evaluating them. And congratulations to Mazars, I must say. Really, they have done a great job in the analysis that they have presented, in the very exhaustive, very comprehensive set of parameters on which they evaluated each of the enterprises. And you just saw Shubhayu giving us a very, very detailed presentation on how Mazars went about it, how they presented it before the jury, which of course allowed us a platform on which to take our decisions. You have to remember at the end that the parameters themselves are so strict that the discretion of the jury is not something that is, I like this, he likes that, she likes this. It's a very, very concerted, very logical, very well-conceived outcome that the jury finally provides. And we had to deliberate long and hard on many of the awards that we finally presented. There were 2 or 3 things that I thought I'd highlight here. We felt that where the compliances were not complete, or where we felt that a regulatory compliance is missing, for example, in the CSR segment, if the 2% expenditure was not taken, then we tended to make sure that those companies are not awarded. So we were very strict on that front to ensure that, it protects not only the reputation of ICC, the reputation of the jury, and of course, ultimately the reputation of the company that is finally awarded. So we were very careful on that. Another decision we had to take, although painfully, was that in some categories, we refrained from actually giving an award. And we did that because where we did not find really meritorious work, we are calling this the PSC Excellence Awards. And therefore, we would really like to award those who are excellent, who are outstanding, who are doing really great work out there. And before I end, I'll only say this, that, what Mr. Sharma said in the outset, whether the business of government is to do business or not remains for me a rhetorical question. Whoever does business better at any point of time deserves to be in business. And I think Dr. Singh also put that across, that in many, many areas, public sector has outperformed the private sector. Let me say that currently I'm working in the steel sector, and we have been completely deregulated. Dr. Manmohan Singh deregulated us in 1991 in his very first budget, the series of budgets that he presented. And today, the two giant public sector enterprises, SAIL, the Steel Authority of India Limited, and what used to be known as Vizag Steel, now the Rashtriya Ispat Nigam Limited, are two. And who are they competing with? They're competing with Tata Steel, with JSW Steel, with JSPL, with AMNS. And so there is open competition, and SAIL and RINL are out there in the marketplace, competing rupee for rupee, product for product, equally standing shoulder to shoulder with the private sector. And irrespective of whether those three dreaded C's exist or don't exist, now that issue has become pretty much marginalized. The fact of the matter is that you go out there, you compete, you cut your costs, and you make sure that you earn profits. So a lot of mindset change has happened in the public sector over these past few years, very healthy mindset change. And because of that, you see tremendous performances in many sectors of the economy by the public sector. So I would pay a tribute to them. This is a worthy cause and a worthy platform in which to pay our tribute to them. So thanking once again ICC, thanking once again Mazars, and of course every single member of my fellow jury who sat with me and who deliberated hard and long and decided who to give the award to whom and in which category. So thank you everybody. It's been wonderful addressing you. It's been a wonderful experience being part of the jury, and I hope that ICC will continue its endeavors in the years to come. Thank you very much.
Surely, sir. Thank you so much. And with that, we move on now to the awards. These awards, ladies and gentlemen, are being given for contribution of PSEs for the financial year 2018-19. So the first category, as we had already mentioned, is Operational Performance Excellence. This award is being based on a series of parameters such as initiatives. And the three shortlisted companies in this category are CRWC, NCL, and IREL. And the award goes to a huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for Northern Coalfields Limited. May we have the representative from Northern Coalfields Limited to please acknowledge the award.
Yes, sir. I am P.K. Sinha.
Yes, sir.
Northern Coalfields.
Welcome, sir. Yes, sir. Please.
Sir, for this award, it is a very proud moment for us in receiving this award. And we are thankful to the ICC for this award, as they have adjudged NCL for this these three awards. NCL, I must inform you that the NCL is committed for the energy security of the nation, and we are one of the subsidiary company of the Coal India Limited. So we are engaged in the producing coal, and for the nation, we are ensuring the energy security. Thanks a lot, sir. I must be thankful to the ICC who has organized this and has judged us this NCL as in this 3 awards. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. We now move on to the second category, human resource management excellence. Some of the parameters, as has been mentioned for this category, are performance management policy, skill development policy, HR policy, whistleblower policy, and many more. The 3 shortlisted companies here are, once again, IREL, NCL, and CRWC. And the award for the runner-up in this category goes to IREL India Limited. A huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for IREL India Limited. May I request the official representing IREL, please acknowledge the awards.
Yeah. Yes, I'm D. Singh, CMD of IREL, and I would like to thank ICC for giving us this proud moment. Also, I would like to thank the jury members, and I would also like to thank my team of HR who has contributed for achieving and getting this award. In fact, IREL is a public sector under Department of Atomic Energy, and we have been mandated to produce strategic material which is used for production of nuclear power. In addition, we have a lot of commercial activities also. So we have to draw balance between the commercial and strategic activity. The sector, this public sector is in operation since 1963, but we are operating a sector which is existing since 1909. So during this time, we have not only overcome a lot of legacy factors, but also introduced number of initiatives, innovative models in HR. So once again, thank you for jury ICC for considering us this award. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Singh, and congratulations to IREL once again. And now moving on to the winners. Any guesses, ladies and gentlemen? The winner for this category goes to, once again, Northern Coalfields Limited, NCL.
Thank you very much, sir, for nominating us as a year. And I'm again PK Sinha. I have introduced myself and about my organization. I extend my heartfelt thanks to the ICC who has organized this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We move on to the third category, CSR and sustainability. Some of the parameters here are percentage of CSR expenditure, board level CSR and sustainability committee, CSR projects undertaken, and so on. In this category, the awards have been divided separately for the Navratna and Maharatna companies on the one hand, and the Miniratna companies on the other. We first go to the Navratna and Maharatna companies, and the 3 shortlisted companies here are BHEL, IOCL, and National Aluminium Company Limited. And the runner-up in this category goes to Indian Oil Corporation Limited. Congratulations, Indian Oil Corporation Limited. May I request representative from IOCL to please acknowledge the award.
Good afternoon to all present. I am Sugam Krishna, Executive Director. A big thanks for this honor. and recognizing the effort of Indian Oil in the sustainability front. I understand for the nominated project for utilizing the technology developed by Tamil Nadu Agriculture University for water reduction in paddy irrigation, which was implemented in 50 villages. Once again, a big thanks to all concerned, and rest assured many such projects are in pipeline and we'll continue our efforts to do so. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Prasad, and congratulations to IOCL once again. And the winner in this category is National Aluminium Company Limited. A huge round of applause for NALCO. May I request a representative from NALCO to please acknowledge the award. This award is for CSR and sustainability. Do we have anyone from NALCO here? Okay. We move on to the Mini Ratna category in the CSR and sustainability in the Mini Ratna category. And the shortlisted companies are Wapcos Limited, MDL, CRWC. The runner-up in this category goes to MDL, Mazagon Dock Shipbuilders. Congratulations, MDL. May I request the representative from MDL to please acknowledge the award?
A very vibrant good afternoon to you. It is indeed a matter of great honor, pride, and privilege for me to receive this award from ICC, the 10th PSC Excellence Award for CSR and Sustainability. I would just like to drive this particular point to you that Mazagon Dock Shipbuilders Limited is the oldest shipyard in India, with inception in 1774, incorporated in 1934, and taken over by the government of India in 1960. MDL is the only shipyard in India to have built destroyers and 2 different types of conventional submarines for the Indian Navy, and is also one of the unique shipyards in the world with such diverse range of products. From the time it was taken over by the government of India in 1960, MDL has built 796 vessels, including 25 capital warships and 4 submarines. The first warship built by MDL was commissioned into the Indian Navy in 1972, and the first submarine in 1992, which demonstrates our resolve towards Atmanirbhar Bharat and Make in India initiative since that time. In commercial sector, MDL has built around 631 vessels comprising cargo ships, supply vessels, water tankers, tugs, dredgers, fishing trawlers, barges, etc. We have also built 63 number offshore platforms, 3 process platforms, 2 jack-up rigs. Out of all these, 243 vessels were also exported to Mexico, France, UK, Iran, Yemen, Mozambique, etc. Presently, Mazagon Dock Shipyard Limited is the lead shipyard in this country and enjoys an order book of roughly about 54,750 crores, and building 40 number project 15 Bravo, 3 number project 40 number project 15 Bravo platforms, 40 number project 17 Alpha stealth frigates, and 40 number project 75 submarines for the Indian Navy. Today, incidentally, also happens to be the IPO launch of Mazagon Dock Shipbuilders Limited, and it has been an astounding success that against a launch of 444 crores government requires, the investors have reposed a faith in the entire ability and the capacity of the shipyard by parking 70,000 crores along with this particular company. As regarding the CSR is concerned, MDL has been encouraged with the overall development in this area, and also certain aspirational districts such as Nandurbar and all. In the recent times, which is COVID, we have contributed immensely our might by contributing 50% of our CSRs fund towards all the COVID related activities and also restoration of jobs for particular people. We are highly indebted for being given this particular award, and we are going to be cherishing it throughout. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Congratulations to you and your entire team. And now to the winners of this category, CSR and Sustainability in the Miniratna category, goes to Wapcos Limited. May I request representative from Wapcos Limited to please acknowledge the award.
Here on behalf of Mr. Anupam Mishra, Director Commercial and HR. On behalf of Mr. Mishra and Wapcos Management, I would like to convey our sincere thanks and gratitude to Indian Chamber of Commerce and the jury members for awarding us this prestigious award. Thank you so much.
Thank you and congratulations. We move on to the fourth category, contribution of women in PSEs. Amongst various criteria that has been set by the jury for this category, some of the very important ones are percentage of women in the organization, percentage of women in the board, initiatives for women welfare, and so on. The jury could zero in on only one company in this category. And hence, the award is being given finally to one company out of all the nominations that we have received. And the award goes to, ladies and gentlemen, once again, NCL, Northern Coalfields Limited.
Thank you very much, sir. I am P.K. Sinha, CMD of NCL, Northern Coalfields Limited. And we really thank to the ICC for awarding us the contribution of women in PSEs. Our company is doing a lot of working on the schemes, various schemes on the women contribution, and we hope that in this line we can contribute much. And our whole team is seeing this, watching this program, and they are very much. They are very much stimulated, and thus their enthusiasm is to the peak. And I assure you that with this, we will further contribute much on this women empowerment and etc. schemes.
So Joy, I have a small mention. The jury had mentioned that this award was to be taken by a director of the company who should be a woman.
She, in fact, no director is available in this again. There is no lady director, and even in independent director, we have requested for to post one lady director, but still we are waiting for that.
Okay. So
go ahead.
Yeah. So we move on to the next category, corporate governance. Once again, in this category, the award is being given separately to the Navaratna and Maharatnas and the Miniratna companies. Some of the parameters considered are promotional activities undertaken for anti-corruption and good governance policies, composition of the board, innovative practices undertaken, and so on. In the Navaratna and Maharatna companies, the shortlisted candidates are RECL, BHEL, and Bharat Electronics. And the award for the runner-up in this category goes to Rural Electrification Corporation Limited, RECL. May we request representative from RECL to please acknowledge the award.
We have disbursed upwards of rupees 75,000 crore during the last fiscal. Our healthy notebook reflects not only our strong future, but also our commitment to funding the future. Over 26%
Maybe he is not here online at this moment. So we move on to the winner. The winner in this category, ladies and gentlemen, goes to Bharat Electronics Limited. Sir, could we have, yeah.
First of all, good afternoon to all of you. And I'm really thankful to the Indian Chamber of Commerce, the eminent juries and the knowledge partner Mazars for acknowledging our contribution in corporate governance. In fact, it's our privilege to be chosen for this coveted category, as corporate governance is a way of business in Bharat Electronics Limited. And we take all the measures to uphold the corporate governance principles as stipulated in the Company Act 2013, be it the honesty, integrity, transparency, and all keeping adequate disclosures. In fact, Bharat Electronics has a rare privilege of going public almost 28 years ago, and it was first among the DPSU's categories. Company has continuously rewarded all its stakeholders. Here, if I mention all our shareholders, and today, almost just less than 50% are non-government shareholders. The government holding is 51.14%. And company has always rewarded consistently to its shareholders. Whatever are the mandatory requirements of the Company Act, BL has done more than this. Today we have 3 women directors on our board. One, the government nominee director, and the 2 full-time directors. Whenever it comes to support one of our major shareholders, the Government of India, to uphold its programs. Even I would like to mention, in the current pandemic, when most of the country was under lockdown, BL started its operations and produced 30,000 ventilators to support the government in the to support in the pandemic for the COVID treatment. We go one step ahead of the mandatory requirements. In that line, all the mandatory committees of the board level committees or the non-mandatory committees, most of our committees are under the chairmanship of the independent directors. So, sir, I really thankful once again to all of you that you have acknowledged our contribution, which will further encourage us to continuously uphold the ultimate principles of corporate governance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Batra. We move on to the Mini Ratna category for corporate governance. The award for the runner-up in this category goes to WAPCOs Limited. May I request representative from WAPCOs to please acknowledge.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mohit Suri. I'm working as Manager Commercial at WAPCOs Limited. I take immense pride and pleasure in receiving this award, and on behalf of WAPCOs management, I would like to thank ICC and the jury for considering WAPCOs for this award. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Congratulations. And the winner for corporate governance in the Mini Ratna sector goes to Central Railside Warehouse Company Limited, CRWC. May I request Mr. Grover to please acknowledge the award.
Good afternoon. I'm joined by all my colleagues and our CFO and our company secretary. Good afternoon to all jury members, and it's a real pleasure to receive this Corporate Governance Award by Central Railside Warehouse Company Limited. I would like to thank Indian Chamber of Commerce for giving this PSC Excellence Award to CRWC. It's an honor for us to receive this award in this category. We are a Mini Ratna Category 2 company, small company, but we are doing excellent work in the field of corporate governance. We have 2 women directors on our board. All the board level committees, all the board meetings, risk management, and other internal controls are all functioning very well. In fact, this year we have improved much better than the 18-19, and we had a lot of improvements. We believe that corporate governance is all about bringing transparency and fairness in our working. and we follow the best practices, which include establishing proper internal control systems, policies for ease of doing business for all the stakeholders. Nowadays, especially during the Corona period, where everything is being done through digital platform, it's really important to work with utmost care and at the same time maintain all standards and comply with the requirements for all our stakeholders. Ladies and gentlemen, it's everyone's dream to be recognized and awarded for this work, for the work they do. And I humbly thank Indian Chamber of Commerce for considering us in this category and acknowledging our efforts. I would like to thank and congratulate all my colleagues. Because of them, we are getting this award. And thank you very much, sir, for acknowledging the work of CRWC.
Thank you, Mr. Grover, and congratulations once again to the entire team. We move on to the sixth category, R&D, technology development, and innovation. The important benchmarks that were considered here by the jury were, some of them are percentage of expenditure incurred in R&D, percentage of R&D employee cost vis-a-vis total employee cost, number of patents filed and or rewarded, initiatives taken in innovation, and so on. The shortlisted companies in this category are Rashtriya Chemicals, Goa Shipyard Limited, and REIL. And the winner in this category is Rajasthan Electronics and Instruments Limited, REIL, Jaipur. May I request representative from REIL to please acknowledge the award.
I am thankful to ICC and jury members for awarding REIL in R&D and innovation category. Sir, REIL is a mini Ratna Schedule C CPSC under administrative control of Ministry of Heavy Industry and Public Enterprises. We are working in the area of solar photovoltaic, dairy instrumentation, and e-mobility and energy efficiency. In the past also, we have received this award 3 times in 2013, 15, and 18. This year, REIL has been awarded for R&D and innovation. REIL R&D is also recognized by Department of Science of Technology, Government of India. Our R&D is dedicated for in-house development of products aimed especially for benefit of rural masses and upliftment of their lives in the field of dairy and solar energy. I once again thank you all and my team for this award. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chopra. Thanks and congratulations to REIL. And now the seventh and the last category here, CMD of the Year. The evaluation for this category has been based on criteria such as CMD's participation in committees formed by the Government of India, state governments, statutory bodies, etc., innovative practices adopted, growth in revenue, startup initiatives, awards and recognition, sustainability development initiatives, and many more. The top 3 contenders in this category are Breathwaite and Company Limited, NCL, and WAPCOs. And the award for the CMD of the Year goes to WAPCOs Limited. A huge round of applause for WAPCOs Limited for the CMD of the Year award.
Thank you so much, sir. On behalf of WAPCOs and the entire team of WAPCOs employees, I would once again like to convey our sincere thanks for selecting WAPCOs for this prestigious award. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And now the final award, which is the Jury Award for the Company of the Year. This award is given every year by our esteemed jury based on the overall contribution of a PSE in the different categories of awards. And this time, there were 2 contenders, as you must have noticed, based on the number of awards that these PSEs have received. So ladies and gentlemen, the contenders were National Coalfields Limited and WAPCOs Limited. And after a lot of deliberations and a lot of time that the jury spent online, the award goes to Wapcos Limited. Ladies and gentlemen, congratulations to Wapcos Limited for the jury award for the company of the year.
And the Chamber of Commerce and jury members for selecting Wapcos for this award. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. And with that, we come to the end of the award ceremony for this year. This is a tally of all the awards that have been received by the various companies. The customary photo op by the awardees along with the esteemed guests and jury is something that we will have to miss this time. But hopefully next year, we are going to go back to the tradition. The trophies and the certificates would be couriered shortly to the respective organizations. Before we conclude, may I request Dr. Rajiv Singh, Director General ICC, once again for the closing remarks. Dr. Singh.
So at the end, I would like to congratulate all the winners. I think definitely the best wishes goes to the winners, but let me also compliment all the participants, all the PSUs who were part of the competition and filed their nominations. I think it is also a platform to share the best practices. At the same time, also celebrate the success and the great work which PSUs are doing. So with this, may I once again thank all our esteemed jury members, our jury chair, all the PSUs, the senior officials, CMDs of various PSUs who are with us, our knowledge partner, Mazar. And although COVID has put some limitations in front of us, but still, I think given limitations, whatever best we could do, we have done. And for this, I would like to once again thank our jury, our knowledge partner, and all the participants. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So till we meet next time, goodbye and stay safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Sujay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
How are
sir.
you, Rajiv?
Absolutely fine.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.
So good to
Thank
see
you.
Awesome.
Bye.
Awesome meeting everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Patti.
At least this gave us all an opportunity to meet, even if it's online, for all the meetings
Yes,
and then here in the
yes.
program. So
absolutely.
Yes, it's absolutely beautiful to be able to connect back to everybody,
Yes,
particularly in this COVID times when nobody can